Well, it's been a very interesting Saturday in the Premier League after the Merseyside derby was postponed due to the weather. The weather continued to impact multiple matches on Saturday, for better and worse, of course. But we begin with Crystal Palace earning a point against Manchester City. I'm not sure who the happier team will be here. I guess Palace, but Janusz, let me get your immediate reactions because Manchester City, of course, earn a point. They fight back. There's a lot to discuss. But again, they don't get that win. 8 points behind Liverpool, who have a game in hand. Your thoughts after Palace and Man City draw 2-2 at Selhurst Park?
Yeah, I mean, starting with City, it's another step backwards for them, right? You look at that win against Nottingham Forest, where you say to yourself, okay, maybe they're back. Normal service resumed. They can now put things together and put a challenge to Liverpool, right? You've mentioned it's 8 points here, game in hand. So everything that they've thought they've gained on paper when Liverpool drew against Newcastle, right? It's out the window. Obviously, it's game in hand, but it could go back to 11. I'm not mentioning Arsenal, Chelsea purposely here. But when you look at Manchester City, Pep Guardiola has an unbelievable battle on his hands, right? Because he's got to find structure to this team. The one thing over the years that we knew, there was attacking structure and there was very much defensive structure. They're ordinary. I mean, look at today. The number of chances that Crystal Palace has had. I mean, they've carved them out through the middle on numerous occasions, right? I think it's clear that obviously Gundogan is not a number 6 at the base of that midfield. We know why. We've talked enough about Rodri and the fact that Kovacic is not there. But that defensive structure isn't there. Defensively, what? They've conceded, was it 21 goals this season? I mean, that is unbelievable. That was as bad as they were before they knew they had to go out and get Ruben Dias. Remember those days before Ruben Dias and after Ruben Dias? Well, it seems to me, obviously, injuries. Kanji's out again. Ake's out again. Kyle Walker, disastrous, really, last 6-7 months. That all started in European Championships. And today, right, first goal, he kept that onside in the second goal. I mean, how do you explain that from one of the best defenders in the world in recent years?
Yeah, you said a really good word there, ordinary. That's what I see Man City right now, which is unbelievable. And fair credit to Crystal Palace and Glasner. They got a point against City. But honestly, as you mentioned, when you look at this particular Manchester City, like anybody pretty much can have a go at this point. Rico Lewis, of course, a factor here. He scored the equalizer for Manchester City after Erling Haaland had to come back as well and equalize for City as well. But he also got sent off. Gavardio was playing more centrally. You mentioned, obviously, the absences. What was your key factor today, would you say, for Manchester City? Because we can talk about a lot of things defensively, as you mentioned, conceding goals. But today, specifically against Palace, what did you see today that perhaps alarmed you even more so than any other issue?
That they don't possess the ball the way they used to, right? I mean, if you look at possession in the air, I mean, normally you think of Manchester City almost against anyone, but in particular against teams like Crystal Palace, that there's going to be 70-30, 80-20 possession throughout the game. Now, I checked in the end, it probably was that 70-30, but that's very, very deceptive, right? They've had to chase and because they were behind twice. But if you watch the first half, it was very, very close. I kept on watching that. A lot of sloppy passes. The combination play is not there. I sort of thought that maybe when a second goal, the equalizer, that was the Manchester City that we know. A great combination play, right? It was Gundogan, one touch. I think it was to De Bruyne, then great turn and pass from Bernardo Silva, and a great finish from Rico Lewis. This is the sort of City that we need to see. The wide players getting behind the defenses, right? That combination, that little triangle where they really hug the byline there and cut it back very often, score. That hasn't been there for a long period of time. And again, because, you have to say there's a lot of players out, and I don't care who you are. When so many players are missing, of course, it's going to affect the way you play, the lack of confidence, and maybe not a belief in your team. But I just think that possession of the ball, I don't know if you noticed so many sloppy passes from key players, sometimes a little bit too much power, sometimes behind the players. I mean, you could see Haaland frustrated on 2 or 3 occasions where he was just waiting for a perfect pass that usually comes. And it was just underplayed a little bit or maybe a little bit behind. And for him, it was big that he scored because he hasn't been doing that in the Premier League for a while. It's been kind of a month for him as well. So I guess that's the only bright spot that he scored, and maybe Matheus Nunes, who was excellent for maybe second, third game in a row.
Yeah, a great assist from him, of course, for the Erling Haaland header. You mentioned possession is an issue. Completely agree. I think the factor here, especially when Man City were going forward towards the final third, they were very static. And you saw a clearly frustrated Erling Haaland, of course, but so many. Let me ask you something, because Pep Guardiola, at the end of the match, shaking hands with the referee, Rob Taylor, after sending off Rico Lewis after that second yellow card. He obviously was complaining about it. What do you make of it, the sending off?
I thought it was very, very harsh. There's got to be a room. I'm not here. I'm not going to be the one say, hey, being on the yellow, you got to know better. That's a silly and simple thing to say for everyone. Of course, there are fouls where we all know that it's a second yellow card. But this one, I don't think so. I think it was Chalobah as well. He got stepped on. You're going to reach for the ball. And I think there's got to be room for the referee to kind of think about that. Because to me, that's not a second yellow card at all. So, but that adds to those problems, because that's a player in the center of the pitch. We've mentioned how wide open Manchester City have been throughout this bad spell, really, for the most part, centrally. So now you have, obviously there may be a player or two that's coming back. I haven't checked on Kovacic when exactly he's going to come back, but that just adds to the problems of Manchester City. We have to mention their problems away from home, because that's 13 points dropped away from home. Remember, they only dropped 13 all season last year, I think. And speaking of away, okay, not Premier League, but now Juve away. That's a big one. Then it's Manchester Derby at home for Manchester City, and then they're going to your Villa. Look, this is not looking great. This is a team without form and without confidence.
Yeah, you mentioned that schedule. Juventus, the Manchester Derby, of course, which, by the way, possibly, Rico Lewis, if it stands, he's out for that. John Stones as well, Akanji. So defensive issues could continue. And then, as you mentioned, of course, Aston Villa as well. It's not going to be easy. Manchester City right now, 4th, 27 points as we tape this, but 8 points behind Liverpool. Definitely going to get tougher rather than smoother as we continue. But there you have it. A point for Crystal Palace, it must be said. All right, let's move on here. If there was a game, Janusz Michallik, that mirrored the weather that was going on in the Midlands, it was this one. Aston Villa win 1-0 against Southampton. John Haller-Duran, with his first start of the Premier League season, a great goal, but that's really it. My God, what a horrible game this was. And Villa really were kind of holding on. Ollie Watkins comes on late, tries to score, but in the end, 3 points, back-to-back wins for Unai Emery and Villa. Southampton usually do the whole playing from the back issues. What you make of this one? My God, this was so ugly. And I'm saying that.
It was. I mean, I was surprised in the first half. Just to start. Overall, I think Villa obviously had more chances, clear chances to win this game. But I think if you take just the chances away, I mean, for long periods of time, it was an even game. I was actually quite surprised and happy for Southampton the way they played, because they were causing problems in the run of play. For Villa in the bad conditions. Let's not forget that this is, Southampton clearly the worst team in the Premier League if you look at the standings. So it wasn't smooth sailing. If you just look at the stats and you didn't watch the game, then yes, you're going to look at, wow, this should have been more for Villa, and perhaps it should have been. I think one thing I'll say for your Aston Villa, that these are the sort of games that get you back on track. And, I remember you and I were talking about it. I was harsh on Unai Emery and, this moment, because they haven't had a great moment in the last couple of months, how many ever games before that win against Brentford. But yeah, win against Brentford, win against Southampton in difficult conditions. It almost doesn't really matter how, because you look at the table, that's looking much better for Villa right now. This is going to be a difficult time of the season, already is, because they also have Champions League coming, I think they're away to Leipzig, so that's never easy. As bad as Leipzig has been, that game is not going to be walkover. I think Leipzig actually won today in the Bundesliga as well. So these are the games that get you back on track. It's not all perfect for Villa, but it was a big rotation, I suppose, when Emery understands what was already happening, what's in front of him, and that festive season all along. And the weather, you have to take that into account. It was good, I'll tell you this much, it was good for John Duran to score that goal. Just maybe 30 seconds before, or a minute before that, he had a great chance from very, very close. Well saved by the goalkeeper. And then what seemed like 30 seconds later, he kind of had to work for that goal. And we know of him as the guy coming off the bench when he plays in the starting 11 very often. Maybe you don't get that same result, but I think for Villa, relying on Ali Watkins and thinking that he's the only one that's going to score, perhaps cost them a little bit this season as well. So I think that's a welcome sign.
Yeah, a welcome sign, as you mentioned. The confidence is needed there, because at the end of the day, 3 points are 3 points, and back-to-back wins means that Aston Villa are 5th in the Premier League, only a point behind Manchester City. You mentioned the schedule. They also have a tough schedule: RB Leipzig away, Nottingham Forest away, and then Manchester City. So the games do continue. But yeah, in this particular game, Villa had 18 shots. Only 5 on target, and only came out to 1-0. Southampton, an interesting team, as you mentioned, that they have a philosophy. It goes against them most of the time, but they're kind of like a mid-pitch team. They like to build up, but they don't know really how to finish it. Tyler Dibling is an absolute talent. There's no doubt his future is going to continue to shine. But in the end, Aston Villa win 1-0, back-to-back wins, 5th in the Premier League. And that was your Saturday in the Premier League, as of course the Merseyside derby was postponed due to weather. We'll have to wait to see when that will be rescheduled as we tape. But much more to come, including, of course, Tottenham against Chelsea, a very important game on Sunday. Janusz Michallik, Luis Miguel Echegaray, ESPN FC Live. We'll come back to you very, very soon. Thanks for watching.